Hello, this is a base shape that I've made for one of my garden projects for my latest book, which should be out very shortly or is already out depending on when you watch this. I'm not a woodworker. In fact, I despise woodwork, and I'm also quite lazy. People think I've got a lot of patience, but I really haven't. I'm very lazy indeed. And so I try and make everything as simply as possible. And for me, it's all about the vegetables that are going to go in this garden. As you can see, I've already put some potatoes in that are going to be next to a potato plant. And they're going to be looking as if they're just being dug up. But this, quite simply, is just built on a wooden base that I've taken from a box, rather like this one. And what I've done is I've sawn this box to pieces, taken off each layer, and I've had my husband, bless him, put bases on them. And the reason I want a base is so that it can link together and so that it's self-contained. Each piece is self-contained. And this garden's made up of 3 pieces. So if you were to buy a box like this and sew it up, you could make a garden of up to 4 pieces. And that's very good if you're wanting to carry things around. And of course, being a travelling miniaturist, I tend to like to carry things around. So, as you can see, this base has got, it's made in the form of an allotment, and it has what we call raised beds, and it's filled with soil, and these walkways have a sort of scenic material around them to make it look as if it's those bark chippings that people use to keep the weeds at bay. So I've got halfway with this project here. Just let me put this one down. And this is me at my sort of halfway stage. And these little pieces that are going in here, I better explain how I've made these, sorry. These parts which are stuck on the top of this raised base are simply made up from the bits of wood from wooden trivets that I've bought in a Chinese shop. And I've taken the trivets apart, cut approximately 2 inches, which is about 5 centimetres off the end of each. So one side and one end makes one piece of the slat from a trivet. And I've just re-glued them. And because it's an allotment, I don't care that it's not tidy, because I've seen some allotments and they really aren't. So it doesn't matter. That's the great thing about gardens. You can put all your junk in gardens. You can put your broken pots and everything that doesn't look quite right, that you would never put in a house, can go in your garden, both in real life and in miniature. Right, so then I got some of the, I think it's coconut fibre that they sell in various gardening shops, and I bought mine from a certain German supermarket in a very tight dried block, and I then stuck it in my mixer, my food processor, and I've got these dry bits here. And if you sieve it, the underneath bits, the smaller bits, look more like this. So that's the sieved version. So the bits that look like bark chippings, you put on the walkway, and the other bits are for filling in these bits. Now you'll see I've got some funny little shapes already stuck in here, and this is so that I don't use too much material. It's and also so that I can stick the plants in later. And some of you might recognise this shape, because what it actually is the shape of my metal safety ruler. And all I've done is I've mixed up some old polymer clay bits, rolled it out flat and baked it over this ruler, which makes quite a nice sort of a shape for a garden. I'm a loss for the word for it, but I've used the same thing in my Spanish Mediterranean garden, and our garden here in Spain looks very much like that, with a sort of raised part with a watering part in the middle. In actual fact, for this one I'm going to fill this in a lot more than I have done for the Mediterranean garden, but it's still there to make sure that I can later drill in and plant the plants. But in order to make the plants stick underneath there, what I need to do is fill underneath there. As you can see, these ones don't have any soil on them at all. But what I use to fill that in is some of this oasis. And you really don't need very much, so I'll just put a little bit off. That might even be too deep. And so I need enough just to go in there. And what will happen is that this will grab onto the bases of any plants that are sticking there. I'm just going to almost carve this. Well, I would if the knife was sharp there. Because where it goes in like that, it won't fit inside. I should have sharpened this knife. I've got quite a few of these butter knives, but some of them aren't very sharp. So it's just being a nuisance for me at the moment. It won't cut. Normally it will. So I need some glue, and obviously I want to use the cheapest glue possible. So this, once again, comes from one of the Asian shops. I don't always like to admit it, but obviously when we're making things like this, we need to keep it cheap. So I've bought myself some of this very cheap wood glue. It says it in Spanish, obviously, but it's just wood glue. And I've mixed already some of this with some of this soil material. I'll just push that out of the way a minute. So I've mixed some in there, and I might as well just put a blob in for the next job into the side of here. So it says it's like a PVA glue. I think it says it's a vinyl glue. But this is just about the cheapest I could get. It was just €3 for this big tub, so it means I can afford to splash out. But wood glue works very well on this coconut fibre, which is what this soil material is. Soil substitute. One thing that you do have to do is make sure that it dries out quickly enough not to go mouldy, because being an organic material, it can go mouldy. If it dries out quickly enough, it doesn't go mouldy. Right, so I've got some glue in the bottom of here, and I'm just going to roughly smear the bottom of this, just to hold this bit of oasis on, and then put some glue underneath this section. It wasn't that section, was it? I was going to use this one. This section. Just to hold that in place. Now, as you can see, I've got lots and lots of gaps here, and so all I'm going to do is fill this in with some more of this material, this soil substitute material, which I've already mixed. And I'm just going to butter it in with my palette knife. Don't worry about being messy. It is a garden after all, so it shouldn't matter. This bit was just glued on with the same wood glue, and I just painted the wood glue on and then dropped the material on top of it. This glue is coming to the surface a bit on this, so I might just sprinkle it with some other material. Another material you can use is the dust out of your tea bags, which is darker and can make a nice darker soil colour, but obviously there isn't very much, so you have to drink tea for a year to get enough to even just to sprinkle on the very top of this. I do drink that much tea, so I've always got plenty to hand. And I have to have mine sent in big boxes by my friends and family from England to Spain, because they don't do my decaffeinated brand. I'm one of those who only gets a loo with their tea, and I only drink it decaffeinated because otherwise I'd be on the ceiling. Here we go. That's pressed nicely into the edges there. You don't need to be too careful, just tidy the edges up a bit. You're going to be covered in plants later, and so any little roughnesses won't show. And in fact, if you want it to look more rough, you can just add extra bits wherever you like. So that's how to fill those, and I'll be filling all of those, and eventually that will look slightly different shape because I decided to give them some variety, but that will look like that, ready for the plants. And that forms a very small part of my new book. So if you're thinking of buying my new book and you want to start off getting ready for it, it's a good idea to think about what materials you might collect, cheap materials you might collect together to make your garden base.